Hello everyone, Sonic Sanryaku here, and we're back with more advanced combat tech, tips, and tricks for Neo the Wardens with you. In today's episode, we're going to learn how to execute side-switching combos using the variant of Switch Strike granted by the pin Wolf. To the uninitiated, side-switching combos are a popular form of player expression in high-level action games, as they emphasize style and ingenuity by demonstrating conscientious character positioning around enemies through the use of robust movement tools inherent to the combat mechanics. Simply put, players use their characters' movement tools to switch left and right, slide forward and behind an enemy, assaulting them with attacks, all the while considering how their spatial orientation affects their ability to juggle the enemy in place or across the arena. Now I'm sure you can imagine how rewarding it feels to not only possess a myriad of ways to dart around enemies during combos, but to be able to conceive stylized and intricate mix-ups using one's spatial intelligence, working memory, and reaction speed. It's absolute action gaming bliss. At first glance, Neo's combat inventory doesn't seem to support side switching, let alone any kind of combo diversification based on high-profile movement options. There's no jump button, no ground or aerial dash, no sidestep dodging or gliding. Activating pins to draw your characters within a certain vicinity of the target before damaging is effectively how a player will be closing distance between them and the enemy. If not that, you're probably relying on running towards them to close the gap, which, if we're being honest, isn't exactly stimulating considering the base running speed in Neo is a smidge on the slow side. Sure, you can attempt to use tech like wave dashing, which is performed by simultaneously pressing a pin and the dodge button at the same time to execute an instant dodge cancel for some extra bit of movement speed, but the tech doesn't quite work the same with all pins, given their different activation windows, reducing the tech's practicality in combat as a whole. Trying a wave dash can at times lead to the player unintentionally burning through their pin meter without gaining much ground, wasting away precious meter that could have been used for offense. There are also certain pins that can be triggered to perform this wave dashing tech while on cooldown, but again, not all pins can do this, so the tech itself is uneven as a movement option. So does Neo's combat loop suffer from its lack of multifarious movement? The general answer is no, as its combat logistics complement each other splendidly, resulting in a plethora of unique battle interactions emergent from constant playtime and experimentation. Its core combat design permits an ample amount of creative and satisfying combo strategies due to the inherent tactical permutations granted by the game's combination of offensive and defensive systems. Pair that with the free-from nature to which combat challenges can lend themselves to multiple viable solutions, and you've got a well-thought-out action paradigm that consequently accommodates its sparse mobility toolkit. With all that being said, Neo's unique combat, while facilitating judicious combo crafting through its solid entourage of mechanics, can seem impermissible to stylish innovation due to the game's strained mobility mix-ups. This is kind of a shame, not because Neo's combat is perfunctory without robust mobility options, but precisely because Neo's combat system is so well conceived that an extra movement option or three could have injected into its action elements an additional degree or two of flair. It's not like Neo doesn't have moments of style without complex mobility tools. Hell, there's some cool looking side switching shenanigans that can be performed with simple execution, like dodge canceling Vulcan uppercuts as finisher upon startup to sneak behind enemies early and maintain aerial juggles. Players can also move around enemies when using a hold activated pin while another pin is in use to attack from any direction, or even buffer activate a pin to maintain an inactive party member's position on the battlefield rather than forcibly teleporting them within enemy range. These methods are sure to provide positional setups and follow-ups for combos, but the player isn't always able to exert intentional control over their party's position at any point during their offense. This is where the Wolf pin comes in. Excusing this long-ass preamble, let's get into why Wolf's version of Swift Strike adds some welcome depth to Neo's side-switching combo potential, what this variant has over other Swift Strike and Drift Tackle type pins, and how the other mechanics I covered in previous episodes, like party member priority, positioning, and camera framing, play into this side-switching tech. Wolf's Swift Strike essentially acts like a grounded dash with insanely quick startup, extremely short end lag, a large number of single button uses per pin meter, and intangibility during the first few frames of the dash. The insanely quick startup and distance covered per dash allows the player to strafe quickly across the field, making it possible to chase down faraway locked on enemies without having to spend meter activating another pin just to close the distance. Technically, using Wolf to chase down a target is activating a pin to close distance, but in this case, the approach is much more controlled. It doesn't feel as if you're just being pulled towards an enemy, but rather approaching them with a measured sense of precision. Now at the end of the day, Wolf was still bound by Neo's lock-on targeting rules, so you don't really have a full directional control over your dash. But Wolf hones in on enemies without too much deviation from expectations, so most of the time, you'll find yourself dashing the direction you want when pursuing your target. Now let's get into Wolf's intangibility during its first few frames, as this important attribute lends to its side-switching prowess, and efficiently gives way to two key opportunities: spatial reorientation and party member teleportation. Upon using Wolf, so as long as it was the last activated pin, its user becomes the lead party member and seizes priority over the camera. Since Wolf's Swift Strike is able to phase through enemies and place its user on their opposite side, the camera will adjust their position, resulting in a reorientation of the stage relative to the user, as seen here. This is where the other important detail regarding how to perform side-switching combos, the snapping of your characters to the Wolf user's location, comes into play. Remember what we covered in a previous video regarding how Neo handles party member positioning when activating pins? If you don't, a title card should pop up in the corner suggesting said video to refresh your memory. Well, this side-switching tech is basically just an exploit of that design element, as it allows the player the means to snap characters over to wherever the Wolf user travels, so as long as said Wolf user is the designated party member leader. Snapping party members over to the Wolf pin user by activating their pin makes them the designated lead party member, orienting the camera to their perspective as well. By exploring these functions of Wolf's Swift Strike, we can start to see how complex positional strategies can be manifested from such characteristics, granting the player a higher degree of control than was ever possible. As I previously alluded to, Wolf allows a player to take the position-based skill spectrum of Neo's combat to newer heights, almost to the point where it kind of feels like a different game. Look how seamless it is to juggle this enemy back and forth across the stage with Patchy, or the speed with which I can knock a fool around with Sister Subwoofer, so as long as I'm using Wolf. Look at the efficiency with which I can place bombs in auspicious locations for cool setups with Wolf. The utility of this pin begets creativity, a result of player agency and skill expression being expanded. Okay, so given that we've highlighted why Wolf's Swift Strike elevates Neo's skill competency through its affordance of combo diversification and positional tactics, let's finally scrutinize the Drift Tackle Psych and other Swift Strike variants to clarify why they aren't in the same league when considering side-switching combat strats. I want to make it clear that other Swift Strike and Drift Tackle pins can provide you the positional switching effect to some degree. The caveat is that these pins just don't do it nearly as well as the Wolf pin does. For one, Drift Tackle has a considerable bit of end lag after its use ceases due to the halting animation that plays out. This results in a much slower and less reliable teleport of party members. If a player were to attempt to snap characters over during a Drift Tackle, they just end up activating their pins in the background without relocating. Look how fast I can teleport characters over to multiple locations with Wolf, due to its faster movement and lack of significant end lag. Now watch me attempt to do this with the Drift Tackle Psych. Not having so much luck here. Drift Tackle also burns through its meter much quicker than Wolf, relative to the distance traveled, making Drift Tackle pins less ideal for zipping around the arena. Drift Tackle gives the player more axial movement and finer control compared to Wolf Strike, so at least it has that over it. But that aside, Wolf's Swift Strike handles this tech so much more gracefully. And then we have the other Swift Strike contemporaries that aren't Wolf, like Omikage for example. Notice how these variants push against the enemies as opposed to facing through them, which not only disrupts how the enemy is positioned relative to your team, but makes coordinating a side switch less precise and purposeful, given the enemy's body jostling around. In addition, the inability of these Swift Strike variants to smoothly place the user behind an enemy until unleashing the finisher, which sends most enemies flying, complicates those precision issues even further. On the plus side, these Swift Strike variants don't suffer from the same end lag that Drift Tackle pins do, meaning you can quickly snap party members over to its user during the finisher. However, with less dashes per pin meter use, these Swift Strike variants get outclassed by Wolf, making their applicability less varied in comparison. I still think Drift Tackle and other Swift Strike pins have their unique value, but when it comes to side switching, their performance doesn't measure up to Wolf's. So, what's the best way to get good at side switching combos in Neo? First, I'd say to try getting used to the way Wolf's Swift Strike makes the character move. Understand the timing of the dashes, and when using it will have you move past the enemy, and when it won't. You might find yourself accidentally dashing away from the target when you meant to dash past them, so make sure you understand how your positioning affects the game's read of your dash. Next, try getting a feel for snapping your characters to the locations you want. Rather than attempting to do fancy tricks right away, just get used to popping your party member over to the opposite ends of an enemy. Once you make that second nature, you can practice simple side switching juggles like the patchy one I demonstrated earlier. As you get the hang of that, attempt a mix-up with 2 pins. Learn to get good with doing those consistently. As your skill cap broadens with practice, you can attempt more complex mix-ups that challenge your mental dexterity in keeping track of which pins are active, how those pins will confirm into one another, what pins you need to activate next as you switch locations, how those pins will affect the enemy's position, and so on. It can get pretty challenging as you attempt highly convoluted setups, but it feels oh so good once you nail it down. Be sure to practice, and good luck to all of you attempting to master Neo's more stylish side through this tech. And that's all I've got for this video. Join me next time as we explore Neo's groove/mashup system, recognizing the utility of the various mashups available to the player, and how to be proficient with their use. As usual, like, comment, and make sure to subscribe to stay locked in for more Neo the Wardens with you, or any other content I drop in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.